All right, let's get into this. I already had to stop the stream. I had little technical difficulties. So we got Aberfeldy 12 right here. This is a 12-year-old Highland Scotch. We've got pour in the glass. Now, the house style from this, because I actually got to speak with the reps about this, which was wonderful education. I got to taste the 15-year and the 18-year. So, house notes on this are vanilla, honey. It's going to have baking spice and also a little bit of citrus in there, too. Now, this is a very approachable Highland Scotch. The style is very wonderful. It's near Speyside, and where you can find Aberfeldy in the Highland region. You're going to draw from north, south, east, and west, and it's in the dead center of Scotland. It's going to be where the highest peak, the deepest loch, and also the longest glen, which is a valley, are all located. This was shipped to Perth for Dewars. It was, I think, the first distillery that the Dewars family actually owned and operated. And with that, I believe it was, if I'm recalling the names correctly, is it John Alexander and um, Tommy Dewars? I think was the sons' names. And with Aberfeldy, this would get shipped to Dewars, which is the most awarded Scotch, as well. I'm just gonna mention that. Um, when we got to taste this, they were telling us about the way that this is done for at least the 15 and 18 years. So I would believe it holds true also to the 12-year. But it was done in ex American and ex European casks, which are oak and bourbon, and then sherry as well. And it's done for a minimum of 12 years. That's the youngest whiskey that's going to be in this bottle. It's a longer distillation or fermentation process that takes place. So they actually ferment this to bring out the alcohol for about 72 hours. In comparison, I believe the average for most Scotch is between 58 and about 60. So it's kind of a little bit of a longer fermentation process to bring out that alcohol. To be considered a Scotch, any Scotch can be a whiskey, but not every whiskey can be a Scotch. So you're going to have this bottled and distilled in Scotland and aged for a minimum of 3 years. It has to be a grained spirit, and afterwards, it has to end up between the alcohol percentage of, I think, 94.8, and once bottled at the lowest, 40% alcohol in there. This is a wonderful Scotch with the ones I got to taste that were 15 and 18 years. So I'm looking forward to this 12-year. The master distiller, or the master of malts and the director of blending, who's actually crafted this as well, and made this recipe so much better as well, is going to be Stephanie McLeod. She is the seventh master of blending, or director of blending at Dewars, in its history since it opened up in 1846. That's over 175 years that she is number seven. And she is also the first female recipient of the IWC award, which is the International Whiskey Competition. That, I believe, on average is about 20 masters palates that have to judge this over 5 consecutive years. Has the title, and she's still the current holder of that title. So she is a master of her craft. But we're gonna go ahead and taste this now. God, I love the smell of that one. So I got these Norland glasses have divots on the inside, so they help separate the alcohol and ethanol from each other, so you get a better smell. I want to get the Glencairn glasses, which are the smaller tulip ones that most distilleries have in order to taste them. But it's nice. From being aged in oak as well. That is actually, it has a wonderful, like, slight dryness to the mid palate, very similar to like a weeded bourbon. This is in similar style to like a bourbon, an Irish whiskey, or a Japanese whiskey. Um, it's very approachable. Now, I love that on this as well. You get a nice sweet aroma. For me, it tastes kind of like what does it taste like? Like apple pie, but not like sweet. Like just the flavor that you get from the baking spice in there. And It's easy. It's easy to drink. So also another thing too, if you're trying a spirit, I've noticed because I used to drink a lot of different high proof bourbons and stuff. You always get choked up after you take a shot when you breathe in. So the proper way to enjoy a nice whiskey like this neat is you're going to put it in your mouth and swish it all around, get it in under or over it, the entire palate, everywhere in that the taste receptors you have all along your tongue. You're going to then breathe in through your nose, holding the spirit in your mouth, and then afterwards swallow and breathe out through your mouth. When you do that, what it's going to do is it's going to breathe that ethanol away that is in the alcohol so that you don't get choked up from the immediate first taste from it all. So that will give you a better, clean profile to judge because when you breathe in and then you get choked up, your throat gets raw, gets rasped. A lot of people say it's bitter or it's strong for the proof, and you can drink any proof if you know how. I'm a firm believer on that. You just have to be able to enjoy your spirit. Now, another thing you can do is I have right here on the side just some soda water. This is just a lime flavored. Um, I mean, honestly, soda water is going to help cleanse the palate, give you that first sip feeling again, or as close as you can get to it, because it will help peel back the alcohol and that flavor that you have going on because it's got more sodium. You need something acidic to cut, not a higher pH level. Higher pH level is going to allow brighter, more oily and salty flavors to express onto your palate better and linger properly so that you can taste every note. But with this one, you want to refresh that bite. Now, you have to realize too with Aberfeldy and with all Scotch or whiskey in general, you do lose a share, and so they call it the Angel's Share. And this one is no different from that. You lose that, and that's where the love and craft and labor goes into it all. Now, I'm gonna see because they had some review notes as well in a book that I have. So look here, and as well, this is awarded 24 gold medals, 2005's Gold International Wine and Spirits Competition in the United Kingdom, 2007's World Spirits Competition San Francisco, 2012 Gold. It got Monde Selection Belgium. Um, but yeah, this is a wonderful, approachable Scotch. So it even says on here we lose our fair share to the Angels. And it says it mellowed for 12 years in handmade oak casks. So maybe this one is only American casks, like those oak ones, versus the sherry. Maybe that was only the 15 and the 18 year because this one doesn't have those like berry undertones that I'm tasting too much of that you usually get from sherry, like raisiny notes, or from aging it in or finishing it in Napa Valley cabs. I've got my whiskey handbook. Only $10 is what I paid for this one, but it's a guide to all things whiskey. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up to. Let me find the page. We'll go to the index because that makes the most sense. There's image credits, and then there are index of brands. Aberfeldy 47 is the page. There's 48 one before. All right, so Aberfeldy. Scotland is perhaps best known for its single malt Scotch. These iconic spirits made from malted barley must be produced from a single distillery. That is, every process from mashing to milling to fermentation and to aging it has to take place under one roof. That they must also employ pot still distillation. Notable brands include Lefroy, Bowmore, Ardbeg, Glenfiddich, Highland Park, and Macallan, or the Macallan. Producers fall in one of six regional distillation: Highland, Island, Speyside, Isla, Lowland, and Campbelltown. Um, Tourism is often linked to regions' prominent distilleries. Aberfeldy Distillery is located at the so-called heart of Scotland, where Perthshire's highest mountain, deepest loch, and longest glen meet. Originally constructed to supply malts to Dewars, its 12-year-old Scotch has become highly acclaimed with apple in its aroma and a fruity taste. A 21-year-old expression was launched in 2005, and it is deeper and richer with a spicy finish. So That's what I have in this book. Now, otherwise, this has just a wonderful flavor. I'm gonna actually put it on the Big Rock and taste it differently from that because most people do enjoy a Scotch on the rock or Scotch on the rocks, Scotch and soda. For me, I traditionally drink mine neat. I don't need anything else, but for science, I have to taste it. I love that flavor. You don't know what I was doing. I was taking away all the rest of the water that has already dissipated from that, being that it had been sitting while I've been yapping. So now I poured from the original into this glass so that it can open up further. Also, chill it. Now, most people just enjoy it chilled because having a nice high alcohol spirit of any sort, you're going to taste a little bit of that burn if you're not used to it. For me, I've got a distiller's tongue, so I need something higher proof. Usually, the taste and the difference between water and alcohol to me is only the color because I need a higher proof bourbon that will give me that burn. But I've been drinking whiskey for a while. As you can see, whiskey is my spirit animal. So now that I've gotten this to kind of chill down just a bit, kind of just get that all evenly distributed for that water that's now breaking up that alcohol. I mean, I don't get too much of a difference. It just has chilled it so far. But as I keep sipping on that, we'll see if it ends up changing up at all. Let me actually get some soda water and re-cleanse the palate so I get a better first sip feel. That was all over. All right, let's go back in for a second sip after revitalizing the palate. See, I traditionally don't like it on the rock. I feel like it gives it more of a bitter flavor. I don't know if it's because you taste more of like the oak in there after it opens up. Maybe that's the most predominant flavor that I taste after. And I'm not the biggest fan of oak for the actual flavor of it. I usually drink more whiskey for like the caramel, the honey, the citrus that you get from it. Like I get orange and lemon usually in most bourbons, and this I get more of that apple, more of that smoked. It tastes like an apple pie to me, just not like on the sweet side of an apple pie, which I like. For me, that's very approachable. I like that this has a little bit more spice and bite than the 15 or the 18 year personally, because I like that rougher kind of whiskey. Some people might even get wood smoke from the oak that gets imparted in there versus like peatiness that you get in the Isla Scotch. And it's going to be very similar to like Speyside's region of the way that they do things as well for like the 15 or the 18 year personally versus this 12 year. I feel like this 12 year is very traditional, old school Highland Scotch for the flavor. Because with usually when I go more of Speyside, which is right next to that region. It's so close, but it has to have its own specific name for that region because they have so many distilleries. It's actually the most distilleries in one notable small space for a region in the entire world. And you get certain ones like Macallan, Glenlivet, Glenmore, or Glenfiddich as well, and they all tie for like number one in sales of all Space Side, but Glenfiddich actually beats out Glenlivet and Macallan every year. They're always tied for second and third. Now, Macallan has more honey notes personally to that Scotch versus Macallan or Glenlivet has more honey notes. Macallan has sherry cask. That's their thing that Macallan does all the time. They're just basically known for their name. They're like the Rolls Royce of whiskey. With Macallan, I'm not the biggest fan because of the pure sherry cask notes in there. I get a little bit more the raised personally. I don't know if it's the way that they do it or whatever, but that's what I get personally. Versus, I feel like Glenlivet I like more, but they also have like Dollamores in that region, I believe, and I love Dollamore. Dollamore is a beautiful Scotch, but I digress. We're gonna go right back into this and taste it now that it's kind of opened up and chilled more. Now it's tasting a little bit just more like biting onto like almost a burnt piece of apple pie because of the that oak that you get. I like that flavor, but I mean, me personally, I like more of like the foolproof strength because I can taste it more predominantly the oak than anything else again. But that's just me. Scotch on the rock has never been my thing. I'm more of a purist. I like the spirit in the full strength, full form. I don't need to dilute it to taste certain notes that you might be missing or that aren't as prominent. But then also you mute a lot of the flavor too. When you chill something so quickly and start to dilute it, it starts to open up too much sometimes. I think that like certain good examples is if you shake a gin martini versus stirring it, that you're losing botanical notes and other flavors that you might have imparted into a cocktail or just on its own neat. Gonna go in for another taste. I get a little bit more of the citrus. I get like a bright lemon on the back palate. On the front, I get a little bit more of the spice. Mid palate, I get a little bit more of a dryness to it. It's got a little bit of almost like a leathery tobacco flavor that I'm getting as well. I know that smelling it now, you're not going to smell shit because it's chilled, so I'm not even going to do that. But tasting it, now that it's kind of diluted a little bit more, it's getting a little bit more palatable for the flavors versus having just that bitterness from the oak that I was getting at first because it started opening up more. This is why doing stuff like this I think is always good for a scientific point of view of the way that certain things taste. You have to enjoy them with certain things. Like if I was making a cocktail with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out like a palette of different flavors. Salt, sweet, spicy, sour, and then as well like an umami kind of flavor, something that has a little bit more of like a body to it. Like I think that this would go really well in a New York sour because if you get like something like the 15 or the 18 year, it's going to have a little bit more of those like Cabernet feel to the actual scotch itself. I think that that would go really well with that. A little bit of an egg white that's on top as well, shaken with some sour in there. You just float that wine float. But I think that this would be a wonderful New York sour variation for Scotch. I think that this would go really well in a Manhattan if done with sweet vermouth. I wouldn't do this perfect because the dry vermouth versus the sweet. I think the sweet's gonna help open up some certain flavors. I would maybe even try this in a Godfather because I feel like the citrus and then those baked apple notes would probably go really well with um the Serrano, the amaretto that's in there because amaretto is like an almond liqueur. There's no nuts that are in there. It's the pith of I think apricots or some shit. But that's what I think that this would go really well with. I mean, this is just me personally, just from my tasting of Aberfeldy 12. And then, by the way, I don't own that image right there. That was just found online. I'm just using it as a background for right now to explain everything, so you know exactly which Scotch we're talking about. Um, I don't claim to own that image. I even left there. It should be like a watermark that's in the center of there, still kind of visible. But I really like this. It's a wonderful Scotch. I think that me personally, I need the full strength. I don't need it on the rocks, but that does help open up notes so you can think of it with like cocktails or what it would go better with, and especially too whether it should be served on rocks or neat. So I think that I wouldn't do this in like a variation of a Moscow mule or anything like a Kentucky mule or an Irish mule. I wouldn't do it personally just because once it's diluted like that, I don't know how that would taste in the flavors. But it's similar to like a Maker's 46 on the way that it hits on the palate for a bourbon. But I personally think that Aberfeldy is a wonderful scotch. This is a great, easygoing, traditional Highland style scotch. Goes down real easy. It's real smooth. It's not like punchy or bitey. Like if you don't like smoky, don't get an Isla Scotch like Lafroig or Lagavulin. You're gonna have a lot of smoke in there. Me personally, that's the flavor I like. I like tons of smoke. I like campfire. I like, I don't know, those like toasted notes that you get. That's why I like sticks. The Maillard effect, the caramelization of the fats and sugars that give it that crust on top. I think it was what was his name? Uh, Chef or scientist Louis Maillard. I forget what he's got another. It's like there's another name like um, I don't remember, but it's like Louis Maillard is the chef who actually or the scientist who created the Maillard scientific term, which is the browning that happens, the aroma that happens whenever the sugars burn on the outside of like a steak. They give it that char, that bar. Well, I prefer it neat, but on the rocks wasn't bad. After it truly opens up, you get a lot more flavors that are more predominant, or more pronounced. But I like that bite that you get from like an actual, just full strength scotch. Well, Aberfeldy 12, the wonderful Scotch, wonderful life. And this has been my review, my tasting of this spirit. If you like this, I plan to have a lot more videos and put them on a playlist and different things. This was actually live on my Twitch right now. And I'll be putting this on my YouTube in a bit as well, just to give that a space and home in a different environment. I hope that if you like this, you tune in because I will be doing more spirits in the future. I have been slacking on that, but I want to get back into it more. There's a lot of different spirits. I do whiskeys, scotches, bourbons, ryes, gins. I like to taste certain cocktails and make those as well. I work in the restaurant industry, so this is a big passion of mine. So if you enjoy this content, feel free to follow me, comment, like, subscribe, whatever, because it definitely is appreciated. This is just something I do for fun. It's not like I'm planning to make this like, oh, this has to be my full time thing. So you gotta follow me. You gotta stay up to date. If you see it, you see it. If you don't, have a wonderful evening. I hope you enjoyed it all. And until next time.